There will always be a time in your life when people will tell you what's normal. They'll say, "This is how business is done. This is how success looks. This is what life should be." And without realizing it, you start living by rules that you never wrote, by standards that don't belong to you. That's how dreams die quietly, not because you failed, but because you never had the courage to define success your way. When you follow everyone else's standards, you become invisible. You start copying their path, chasing their definitions, and when you finally arrive, you realize it's not the destination you wanted. It's just the one everyone else was going toward. The truth is, the world doesn't remember those who followed the rules. It remembers those who created new ones. There comes a moment in every person's life when they look around and realize the world has already built a box for them. It tells them what to dream, how to think, what to chase, and what success should look like. From the moment you're a child, you are told get good grades, find a safe job, earn a living, and never make mistakes. Those words sound like guidance, but if you listen carefully, they're instructions for staying ordinary. Because when you spend your life following standards written by others, you slowly forget how to think for yourself. You stop asking questions. You stop creating. You stop imagining. The truth is, most people never fail because they lack talent. They fail because they copy. They see someone doing something well, and instead of asking, "What can I build from my own mind?" they ask, "How can I do the same thing?" But copying only creates noise. Creation builds legacy. If you spend your life competing with others, your entire energy will be used trying to catch up to them. You'll live your days reacting to their progress, comparing your worth to their milestones, adjusting your dream to fit their rhythm. But if you decide to create your own path, suddenly the race disappears. Because now, you're building something that has no competition. Every truly great story in human history began with someone who refused to compete. When everyone else was running in the same direction, that one person turned around and walked the other way. Not because they wanted attention, but because they saw differently. They believed differently. They were willing to be misunderstood for the sake of something meaningful. Look around. Everything you see, every invention, every comfort, every innovation was once an idea that people laughed at. There was a time when people said, "Humans can never fly." Yet someone dared to imagine wings made of steel. There was a time when people said, "You can't talk to someone across the world." Yet someone imagined invisible signals carrying voices through the air. There was a time when people said, "You can't build a company online." Yet someone imagined it and changed how the world works. Every revolutionary idea began with a decision to stop following and start creating. When you compete, your goal is to be better than others. But when you create, your goal is to be different from others. The difference seems small, but it changes everything. Competing is about ego. Creating is about impact. Competing drains you because it never ends. Someone will always have more money, more success, more recognition. But creating fuels you because it's limitless. It's about expressing what's inside you, about adding something new to the world that never existed before. The world doesn't remember the people who followed rules perfectly. It remembers those who broke them beautifully. Think about that. The system loves followers because followers don't ask questions. But progress is built by those who ask, why not? Why not dream bigger? Why not build differently? Why not redefine what's possible? The moment you stop competing, you give yourself permission to ask better questions. And better questions always lead to better worlds. But let's be honest, creating your own standards is not easy. The path of originality is a lonely one. When you start doing something different, people will resist. They'll call you crazy, unrealistic, too ambitious. They'll say, "It's never been done before," as if that's a reason to stop. But the truth is, every great thing was once something that had never been done before. People fear what they don't understand, and they criticize what they can't control. When you create your own standards, you challenge the comfort of others, and that's why they push back. You must learn to be strong enough to be misunderstood. Learn to walk alone with your ideas. Learn to be patient when no one sees your vision yet. That is the price every creator pays. Solitude in the beginning, respect in the end. Because people don't applaud the seed when it's underground. They applaud the tree when it's tall enough to give shade. So don't expect validation in the early stages. Keep planting, keep nurturing, keep growing. Your time will come. Most people are addicted to comparison. They open their phones, they scroll through the highlights of other lives, and they measure their worth in likes, numbers, or attention. But comparison is poison. It kills creativity faster than failure ever could. Failure teaches you something new. Comparison makes you forget what you were meant to do. You can't focus on your own masterpiece if you keep staring at someone else's canvas. If you want to live freely, stop competing, stop chasing, stop running after trends. Trends die, but truth lasts forever. Build something that outlives the moment. Build something that carries your signature, your values, your story. That's how you create a legacy, not by copying, not by outpacing others, but by outlasting them through originality. When you stop competing, your mind becomes lighter. You start thinking clearly. You start seeing possibilities instead of limits. Because competition is like noise. It fills your head with distraction. But creation is like music. It gives rhythm to your purpose. You'll realize that the only person you truly need to compete with is the version of yourself from yesterday. If you become wiser, calmer, stronger, kinder, more focused today than you were yesterday, you are already winning. Remember, success built on competition disappears when the competitor changes direction. But success built on creation lasts even when the world changes. That's why the greatest entrepreneurs, artists, leaders, and thinkers didn't chase markets. They created markets. They didn't follow demand. They created demand. They didn't copy what existed. They built what didn't. And the world rewarded them not because they were fast, but because they were fearless. One of the most powerful things you can ever say in your life is, I choose to do it my way. Not arrogantly, but confidently. Because when you start living by your own standards, the fear of judgment disappears. The pressure to fit in vanishes. And suddenly, you start discovering the real you, the version that's been buried under the weight of expectations. You stop asking, what will they think? And start asking, what do I think? And that small shift changes everything. So, if you're tired of feeling like you're running in circles, it's time to stop competing. Stop trying to prove yourself to people who don't even notice. Use that energy to build something only you can build. When people say it's impossible, smile and thank them. Because that means you're doing something rare. Something only a few have the courage to do. Let their doubt be your motivation. Let their disbelief be your drive. There will come a day when those same people will look at what you've built and say, you're lucky. They won't understand that luck didn't build it. Courage did. Persistence did. Vision did. Because creation requires faith. Faith in yourself. Faith in yourself. Faith in your dream. Faith in the unseen. You can't create something new if you only believe in what already exists. You must believe in what's possible even when no one else does. The moment you stop competing and start creating, you begin to live on a different frequency. You're no longer chasing, you're attracting. You're no longer reacting, you're designing. You're no longer following, you're leading. And leadership isn't about being above others. It's about walking ahead with purpose, so others find direction in your footsteps. Don't waste your life trying to fit into standards written by people who never understood you. You were born to build new standards, new paths, new ideas. Stop asking for permission to be yourself. Stop asking for approval to dream differently. The world doesn't need more copies. It needs creators. It needs thinkers. It needs people who dare to stand alone long enough to build something worth following. You don't have to be perfect to be original. You just have to be real. And when you're real, you'll find peace in your own lane. You'll find strength in your own silence. You'll find meaning in your own mission. So, my friend, stop competing, start creating. Stop running behind others. Start running toward your own destiny. Because one day, when the noise fades and the dust settles, it won't matter who you outran. What will matter is what you built. What will matter is what you stood for. And when that day comes, you'll smile knowing this truth. You didn't just play the game, you changed it. And when you start creating your own path, When you finally decide that you will no longer be a follower of what everyone else is doing, you'll feel something most people are not ready to face: silence. The world becomes quiet. The phone stops ringing. The familiar faces that used to call you for advice suddenly disappear. The same people who once said, "We believe in you," now ask you, "Are you sure this is the right way?" And in that moment, you'll understand one of the hardest lessons in life: the world loves dreamers only after they have already succeeded. Before that, they question them, doubt them, and sometimes laugh at them. But that's the price of having a vision. Vision means seeing what others cannot. It means hearing the music before the song is written. It means believing in the invisible before it becomes visible. And when you can see what others can't, you will often walk alone. People will not understand your choices, your sacrifices, or your silence. They will try to measure your dream with their logic, not realizing that logic is the language of the present, while vision is the language of the future. If you want to build something truly great, you must learn to trust your vision more than you crave validation. Validation is like sugar. It feels good in the moment, but it doesn't nourish you. Vision is like oxygen. It's invisible, but you can't live without it. Validation fades the moment the applause stops, but vision keeps you alive when no one is watching. The ones who make history are not the ones who waited for approval. They are the ones who moved forward when everyone said no. In the beginning, your vision will look crazy. People will call it unrealistic, unprofitable, impossible. They'll remind you of every reason why it can't be done. They'll quote statistics. They'll bring logic. They'll tell you stories of others who tried and failed. And in that moment, you must decide, will you let their fear become your truth? Or will you let your truth destroy their fear? Because every impossible dream begins as a private belief that refuses to die. There's a phase in every journey where nothing makes sense. You'll be working hard but seeing no results. You'll be giving your all, but no one will notice. You'll feel invisible, exhausted, maybe even foolish. But that's the incubation period of greatness. The stage where faith must carry you farther than evidence. Because vision is like planting a seed underground. It takes time before the first green leaf breaks through the soil, and if you quit watering it just because no one else can see it growing, you'll never see the tree that was meant to change your life. You see, people respect results, not process. They cheer for the success story, but ignore the silent battles that built it. So stop waiting for them to clap for your process. They won't. The world doesn't celebrate the dreamer, it celebrates the dream that worked. That's why the most important applause must come from within. You must be able to wake up every day, look at the mirror, and say, even if no one believes in me right now, I still believe in me. That's the kind of mindset that turns vision into victory. When you depend on validation, you start living like a puppet. Every compliment becomes your fuel. Every criticism becomes your wound. You start adjusting your dream to please others instead of serving its true purpose. And that is how people lose their identity. They trade authenticity for approval. They give away their power just to be accepted. But the ones who make a difference never chase approval. They chase purpose. They chase meaning. You must understand that visionaries are always misunderstood. When you're the first to see something, you will be the first to be doubted. But that's the privilege of leadership. You walk ahead of the crowd, not behind it. When you are guided by vision, you develop patience. You stop reacting to the noise around you because you know what you're building will speak louder than any argument. You start realizing that silence is not weakness, it's focus. Every moment you spend defending yourself is a moment taken away from building something that can defend itself with results. There will be nights when you'll feel like giving up. You'll wonder if your vision was ever real or just a fantasy. That's when you must go back to the reason you started. Ask yourself, why did I begin? If your reason is strong enough, it will pull you through the darkest days. Because the truth is, you don't fail when others stop believing in you. You fail when you stop believing in yourself. The moment you let doubt enter your heart, your dream starts to shrink. So protect it. Guard it. Fight for it like it's the last thing keeping you alive. Because one day, it will give you a life that others can only dream about. You will also learn that validation is temporary, but vision is timeless. People can change their opinions, but they can never erase the results you create from your vision. Today they may laugh at you, but tomorrow they'll quote you. Today they may ignore you, but tomorrow they'll line up to work with you. Let that be your reminder. Never measure your worth by the approval of the crowd. The same people who doubt you now will celebrate you later. Just don't stop before that day arrives. Think of the seed buried in the dirt. It doesn't complain about the darkness. It doesn't cry for light. It doesn't ask anyone to believe in it. It simply grows. Silently. Steadily. Relentlessly. And one day it breaks through the surface. That's what vision does. It turns pressure into growth. So the next time you feel buried by life, remember, you're not buried. You're planted. The darkness around you isn't punishment, it's preparation. Every visionary faces rejection. Every innovator hears no more times than once. But those no's are not walls, they're weights that build strength. Every time someone doubts you, you grow tougher. Every time someone says you can't, you discover how you can. So stop seeing rejection as a signal to quit. See it as proof that you're doing something original. People don't reject what's familiar. They reject what threatens their comfort. And your vision will always threaten the comfort of those who settled for less. You don't need everyone to understand you. You don't even need everyone to support you. You just need one person, you. If you can stay loyal to your vision when it's invisible, you'll be unstoppable when it becomes undeniable. The power lies not in convincing the world, but in convincing yourself every single day that what you're building matters. That is the essence of greatness, believing in your dream long before anyone can see its value. Never forget, validation can be taken away, but vision can't. Validation depends on people, vision depends on purpose. And purpose is eternal, so don't waste your energy trying to prove yourself to others. Use that energy to prove your potential to yourself. Don't ask, do they believe in me? Ask, do I believe in what I'm doing? Because if your belief is strong enough, the rest will follow. Results will come. Respect will come. Recognition will come. But they all come after consistency, not before it. And when that day arrives, when your vision finally turns into something real, you'll understand why the silence was necessary. You'll realize that the doubts were fuel. You'll look back and thank every person who didn't believe in you because they unknowingly gave you the drive to prove that belief doesn't come from applause. It comes from persistence. The people who once ignored your vision will one day depend on it. The same ones who questioned your direction will ask you for guidance. That is the power of staying true to your vision. So keep your head down and keep building. Let your success speak when the time is right. Don't chase the crowd. Don't chase validation. Chase the vision that keeps you awake at night. Chase the dream that burns inside you. Because in the end, the world doesn't remember who followed the rules. It remembers who changed them. And change always begins with one person brave enough to believe before anyone else does. When you choose to create your own standards, one of the most difficult challenges you will face is the pressure of comparison. The world is addicted to comparison. Everyone measures everything. People measure success by money, intelligence by degrees, beauty by followers, and worth by validation. But the moment you decide that you are no longer part of that game, something powerful begins to happen. You stop chasing illusions and start building reality. You stop looking sideways and start looking forward. You stop asking, am I better than them? And start asking, am I better than who I was yesterday? That shift in mindset is what separates those who live with purpose from those who live for approval. Comparison is a silent thief. It steals your joy, your focus, your originality. It's like a poison that slowly kills your creative spirit. You start thinking you're behind, that you're late, that you're not enough. But behind what? Late for what? Enough for whom? There's no universal timeline for greatness. There's no one path to success. Everyone's story is written in a different ink, and everyone's journey is built on a different foundation. The mistake is thinking that someone else's chapter 20 should look like your chapter 2. That's how dreams die. Not because of failure, but because of comparison. You see, when you live by your own standards, You begin to understand something most people never learn. Success is not about doing things faster. It's about doing things right. It's not about competing with others. It's about outgrowing yourself. It's not about collecting trophies. It's about collecting experiences. Because in the end, the world doesn't reward the one who got there first. It rewards the one who built something that lasts. True success is not measured by how many people clap for you, but by how much peace you feel inside when no one is clapping. When you stop comparing yourself, you free yourself. You stop being controlled by invisible expectations. You start setting your own measures. You define what success means to you. Maybe success for you isn't owning a mansion. Maybe it's building something from scratch that carries your fingerprint. Maybe it's waking up every day and doing something that gives you meaning. Maybe it's becoming the kind of person your younger self would be proud of. When you have your own standards, you stop borrowing happiness from others' opinions. You stop letting the noise of the world drown out the voice within. There will be people who'll tell you, this is how it's done. This is how everyone does it. This is what's safe. But remember, safety has never created history. The world you see today, every invention, every breakthrough, every movement was started by someone who refused to follow what everyone else was doing. The moment you start thinking differently, the crowd will label you as strange. They'll laugh, they'll criticize. But that's only because your courage reminds them of their fear. People don't mock what they understand, they mock what they can't do themselves. Every person who creates their own standard becomes a mirror, and mirrors make people uncomfortable. When you live by your own values, you force others to confront their lack of them. That's why it's so hard to stay true to your path. It's not just about overcoming your own doubts. It's about learning to walk proudly, even when others don't understand your journey. But here's the truth. The more you stay authentic, the stronger your presence becomes. Authenticity has a power that imitation can never match. You might not win the race of popularity, but you'll win the game of legacy. When you stop comparing, you also stop rushing. Most people fail not because they don't have potential, but because they quit too early. They look at others' success and think it happened fast for them, without realizing how many invisible hours were behind that overnight victory. Every great success has a quiet beginning. Every massive tree was once a tiny seed buried under the dirt. The only difference between those who make it and those who don't is patience. The moment you build your own standards, patience becomes your greatest weapon. Because when your goals are based on your own values, you're not in a hurry. You're not in alignment. One of the most dangerous traps of comparison is that it blinds you to your own progress. You might be growing, but you can't see it because you're too busy looking at someone else's garden. You start watering your plants with doubt instead of discipline. And soon, you forget why you planted them in the first place. But when you build your own standards, you measure growth differently. You stop asking, am I ahead of others? And start asking, am I ahead of my yesterday? That's the mindset of a builder, a creator, a visionary. You stop competing and start constructing. There's another reason why following other standards is dangerous. It creates dependency. When you always look at what others are doing, you lose your ability to think independently. You start needing external approval to make internal decisions. You lose creativity because imitation replaces imagination. But when you create your own standard, you regain power. You start trusting your instincts. You make decisions based on conviction, not consensus. You stop waiting for permission to begin. And that's when you start living with real freedom. Freedom doesn't come from money, fame, or power. Freedom comes from authenticity. It comes from being able to say, this is who I am, this is what I stand for, and this is how I choose to live. Most people are prisoners of perception. They live in a cage built by opinions. They're too afraid to be different because they want to be liked. But being liked by everyone means you've never truly stood for anything. Greatness begins the moment you stop chasing approval and start chasing truth. When you stop comparing, something else happens. Your creativity explodes. You begin to see things differently. You start thinking in ways others don't. You're no longer bound by trends or traditions. You create your own rhythm. You find beauty in your uniqueness. You realize that the very things that made you feel different were actually your greatest strengths. Every artist, every inventor, every entrepreneur who changed the world did so by embracing their difference, not by hiding it. You'll notice something else too. Peace. Real peace. Not the peace that comes from comfort, but the peace that comes from clarity. When you're not constantly trying to fit into someone else's mold, you stop feeling like you're running out of time. You start living at your own pace. You start focusing on what truly matters. The noise of competition fades, and in its place comes a calm confidence, the kind that can't be shaken by trends or opinions. There will be days when you'll still feel tempted to compare. You'll scroll through someone's life and think they're doing better. You'll feel like you're falling behind, but in those moments, remind yourself you're not on their road. You're building your own. You're not late. You're just early in your own timeline. The path of authenticity always looks lonely at first because few people have the courage to walk it. But every step you take on that path leads you closer to fulfillment, not just success. When you create your own standards, you become unstoppable. Not because everything suddenly becomes easy, but because your motivation no longer depends on others. You don't wake up for applause, you wake up for purpose. You don't measure your progress by likes or numbers, but by the quiet satisfaction of knowing you gave your best. You stop asking for directions and start following your inner compass. Remember, this comparison ends where creation begins. The moment you start creating, you stop competing. You start contributing. You stop worrying about being the best and start focusing on becoming the realist. Because authenticity always wins in the long run. The world doesn't need another copy, it needs originals. It doesn't need more followers, it needs leaders. And leaders are not born by following trends, they are born by breaking them. So stop looking at what everyone else is doing. Stop asking for permission to live your truth. Set your own pace, build your own rules, and write your own definition of success. Because the moment you stop comparing and start creating, you stop being ordinary and start becoming unforgettable. The moment you decide to create your own standards, you begin walking down a path that demands something extraordinary from you: responsibility. Responsibility not just for your success, but for your mindset, your reactions, your choices, and your growth. When you stop following others and start leading yourself, you lose the comfort of blaming anyone else. There's no one left to point fingers at when things don't go your way. You can't say, "They told me to do it." You can't say, "It's their fault." You stand alone, accountable for both the failures and the victories. That's what makes this journey so powerful and so terrifying at the same time. Because responsibility is the price of freedom. Most people don't want true freedom. They say they do, but what they really want is comfortable control. They want to choose, but not to be held accountable when the choice doesn't work out. They want the illusion of independence, but the safety net of someone else's plan. That's why they follow trends, why they copy systems, why they seek leaders to tell them what to do, because it's easier to live in someone else's shadow than to face the light of your own accountability. But if you want to be truly independent, you have to be ready to say, "No matter what happens, I own this. I own my decisions. I own my destiny." When you begin creating your own standards, you must develop an unshakable sense of ownership. Ownership means you no longer complain about the world, you create your own solutions. You no longer say, "I wish someone would fix this." You say, "I will figure this out." That attitude alone can change your entire life. Because the truth is, the moment you take full responsibility for everything in your world, even the things that aren't your fault, you gain control over your future. Responsibility is not about guilt, it's about power. The more you take responsibility for, the more power you have to change it. The reason why most people never create their own standards is because responsibility is heavy. It's easier to point at the government, the economy, the boss, the system, the family, or even luck and say, "That's why I failed." But excuses are like soft pillows. They keep you comfortable, but you never grow sleeping on them. When you create your own path, excuses lose their place. You start realizing that even if it's not your fault, it's still your problem. That's maturity. That's leadership. The people who build legacies don't wait for perfect conditions. They build under pressure. They don't blame the rain. They learn to dance in it. Responsibility also means self-discipline. You can't expect to be independent while living like a follower. You can't demand success without mastering your habits. Creating your own standards means waking up earlier when everyone else is sleeping, studying longer when others quit, working harder when no one is watching. Discipline is the bridge between dreams and results. Most people admire success, but very few are willing to pay its price, and that price is consistency. Every single day, you have to remind yourself, no one is coming to save me. It's my job to do the work. The truth is, when you stop depending on others for direction, life becomes both harder and more beautiful. Harder because the responsibility is yours, beautiful because the control is yours too. You get to decide who you become, what you build, and how you live. That kind of power can change everything if you have the courage to use it. When you live by your own standards, every mistake becomes a lesson instead of a loss. You no longer fear failure because you know that each failure brings you closer to clarity. And clarity is worth more than comfort. You'll notice something interesting once you start taking full responsibility. People around you will start noticing too. Some will be inspired, others will feel threatened, because responsibility exposes people. It shows who's truly committed and who's just pretending. When you hold yourself accountable, you set a mirror in front of others, and not everyone likes what they see. Some will say you're lucky, others will say you're arrogant, but deep down, they're reacting to the fact that your self-discipline makes their excuses uncomfortable. That's how leadership begins, not by telling people what to do, but by showing them what's possible. You have to understand that responsibility doesn't mean controlling everything. It means responding to everything with strength. You can't control how people treat you, but you can control how you respond. You can't control when opportunities come, but you can control how prepared you are when they arrive. Life will always throw things your way that are unfair, unpredictable, even painful. But how you respond determines who you become. The people who grow the most aren't those who avoid problems. They're the ones who take ownership of how they face them. If you ever want to be unstoppable, you must stop giving away your power through blame. Every time you blame someone, you hand them control over your life. You say, "You're the reason I'm unhappy. You're the reason I'm stuck." But when you take full ownership, you take that power back. You stop waiting for apologies, for opportunities, for miracles. You start creating your own. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" That's the mindset that transforms struggle into strength. Another part of responsibility is emotional control. When you build your own standards, you can't afford to be ruled by your emotions. Feelings are temporary, discipline is permanent. There will be days when you feel like quitting, when everything feels pointless, when the world seems against you. But emotions don't define reality. Decisions do. The greatest warriors are not the ones who never feel fear. They're the ones who act with courage even when they're afraid. You can't wait for motivation to show up every morning. You must build routines that carry you when motivation is gone. Because the truth is, success doesn't belong to the motivated, it belongs to the consistent. When you create your own standards, you also redefine success itself. You stop measuring your progress by comparison and start measuring it by integrity. You ask yourself not, "How far have I gone compared to them?" but "Did I stay true to my values today?" That's the kind of accountability that builds unshakable character. Because wealth, fame, and titles can be taken away, but integrity stays forever. When you live by your own standards, you become unbreakable, not because life gets easier, but because your foundation becomes stronger. You'll discover that responsibility also attracts respect. People might not like you, but they'll respect you. They'll know that your word means something. That when you say you'll do something, you'll do it. And that reliability, that self-accountability, will open doors that talent alone never could. The world is full of talented people who never reach their potential because they lack responsibility. But those who build credibility through action become unstoppable. Taking responsibility for your life also means taking responsibility for your growth. You can't build new standards with an old mindset. Growth isn't accidental, it's intentional. It means reading when others watch TV, learning when others gossip, practicing when others rest. It means constantly asking, how can I improve? Even when you're already good. The people who win are not the smartest or the luckiest. They're the ones who keep evolving. And evolution happens only when you take ownership of your learning. Finally, responsibility teaches you humility. Because when you take ownership of everything, the wins and the losses, you stop blaming others, but you also stop boasting. You understand that both success and failure are teachers. You become grateful for the pain, for the pressure, for the process. You stop running from hard things because you realize that hard things shape strong people. You stop seeing challenges as punishment and start seeing them as preparation. So, when you decide to live by your own standards, remember this: it's not just about freedom. It's about accountability. Freedom without responsibility leads to chaos, but responsibility with freedom leads to greatness. The more responsibility you take, the more powerful you become. You don't just build a career, you build character. You don't just chase success, you become the kind of person who attracts it naturally. The truth is, responsibility is not a burden, it's a blessing. Because when you take ownership of your life, you stop being a passenger and become the driver. You stop waiting for directions and start writing your own map. You stop surviving and start creating. And that's what this journey is all about: becoming the architect of your destiny, the author of your story, and the master of your fate. There comes a time in every person's journey when they realize that the world does not reward effort alone. It rewards value. You can work hard all your life, but if your work doesn't create impact, the world moves on without noticing. That's why creating your own standards is not just about being different, it's about becoming valuable. When you start setting your own benchmarks, your goal is not to outshine others, but to outgrow yourself and contribute something meaningful that others can't. The most powerful people in the world aren't those who follow trends, they're the ones who redefine them through the value they bring. Value is built, not borrowed. It's created through time, sacrifice, discipline, and depth. The moment you decide to walk away from imitation and start building your own standards, you enter a different league. One where the currency is authenticity and the reward is respect. People can copy your style, your ideas, even your words, but they can never copy your essence. They can never replicate the energy that comes from someone who knows exactly who they are and what they stand for. To create value, you must first understand yourself deeply. Most people don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they never take the time to know who they truly are. They spend their entire lives chasing the identity the world gives them. They wear masks, one for work, one for friends, one for family, until they forget what their real face looks like. But when you create your own standards, you strip away the masks. You look at yourself honestly and ask, what can I offer that no one else can? That question changes everything. Because the moment you stop chasing recognition and start chasing contribution, you stop being replaceable. The world doesn't need more people who do what's already been done. It needs people who bring a new flavor, a new rhythm, a new spark. It needs people who think independently, create courageously, and stand firmly in their values. When you build your own standards, you become that kind of person, someone whose presence adds meaning to every space they enter. You stop blending in and start standing out, not because you're louder, but because you're real. Creating value means doing things others aren't willing to do. It means putting in the extra hours when everyone else has stopped. It means learning one more skill, practicing one more time, refining one more detail. Because excellence lives in the small things that most people ignore. It's not about showing off perfection, it's about showing persistence. The people who build lasting success don't wait for motivation. They operate on mission. Their goal isn't just to win, it's to serve, to create, to leave something that remains after they're gone. When you live by your own standards, you start asking yourself powerful questions every day. Is what I'm doing today making me better? Am I growing or just going through the motions? Am I adding value to the people around me? Because true greatness isn't about how much you take, it's about how much you give. Every day becomes an opportunity to sharpen your gift, to become more useful to the world. One of the most misunderstood ideas about value is that it comes from what you doth have. But value doesn't come from possessions, it comes from purpose. You can lose everything you own, and if you still have your skills, your integrity, your creativity, you can build it all again. The most powerful asset you'll ever own is the mindset of value creation. The ability to take an idea, a problem, or a moment and turn it into something meaningful. That's the real wealth, knowing that no matter what happens, you can create again. When you build your own standards, you also redefine what success looks like. You stop chasing what's shiny and start pursuing what's significant. You realize that success isn't about how much you earn, it's about how much you learn. It's not about how many people know your name. It's about how many lives you've touched. It's not about being admired. It's about being remembered for what you stood for. Because fame fades, but impact echoes. Creating value also requires humility. You must be willing to keep learning, to keep growing, to keep improving. The moment you think you know it all, your growth stops. The moment you think you've arrived, you start declining. Every day, you must wake up with a student's mindset, hungry to learn, eager to evolve, because the world is constantly changing, and only those who adapt can continue to add value. The greatest leaders are not those who know everything, they are those who never stop learning. But here's the truth, building value takes time. The world might ignore you for years before it notices your work. You'll create, and it will go unseen. You'll serve, and it will go unappreciated. You'll try, and people will still doubt you. But remember, the world might not reward you instantly, but it can never ignore you forever. The day will come when your work speaks louder than your words, when your consistency becomes undeniable. Every great achievement was once a long period of quiet effort. Every masterpiece began in the shadows before it shined in the spotlight. Value creation is not about speed, it's about sustainability. Anyone can get attention, but not everyone can maintain respect. Anyone can go viral, but not everyone can stay valuable. To stay valuable, you must keep reinventing yourself, not to please others, but to evolve your standards. You must constantly refine your craft, challenge your limits, and seek ways to make your contribution deeper. When you do that, success becomes inevitable. The more value you create, the less you need to chase opportunities. Because opportunities start chasing you. People come to you, doors open for you, respect grows naturally. That's the magic of authenticity. When you focus on being valuable instead of being visible, visibility finds you anyway. You become magnetic because the world can sense the difference between someone trying to impress and someone trying to contribute. The first gets attention, the second earns admiration. To build real value, you must also learn the art of patience. Most people give up because they don't see immediate results. They plant the seed and want fruit the next morning. But value grows like a tree, quietly, slowly, deeply. The roots go down long before the branches rise up. And the deeper your roots of discipline, humility, and purpose, the higher your branches of success can reach. So don't rush your growth. Let time polish you. Let effort shape you. Let struggle refine you. There will be moments when your hard work goes unnoticed, when people around you seem to get ahead faster, when you question whether it's even worth it. But remember, shortcuts create temporary fame, standards create permanent legacy. You're not building for now, you're building for always. Every effort you make, every sacrifice you endure, every silent night you work when others sleep, it all adds up. One day, it will make sense. One day, it will be worth it. And when that day comes, when people finally see your results, they'll call you lucky. They'll say, you were at the right place at the right time. But you'll know the truth. Luck didn't build you, standards did. You weren't just in the right place, you created that place. You weren't just in the right time, you made that time. That's the difference between those who wait for opportunity and those who become opportunity. So, when you decide to build your own standards, don't focus on being better than others, focus on being useful to others. Don't chase being recognized, chase being remembered. Don't aim to impress, aim to impact. Because when your work begins to touch lives, you no longer have to introduce yourself. Your value does it for you. And that's the ultimate goal, to become so valuable that your name becomes a symbol, your work becomes an example, and your life becomes a lesson. When you live by your own standards and give the world something it didn't even know it needed, you don't just succeed, you become significant. And significance lasts far longer than success ever will. There's a stage in every journey when the applause fades, the crowd disappears, and all you're left with is your own reflection, your own thoughts, your own standards, and your own sense of direction. That is where the true test begins. Because creating your own standards isn't just about dreaming big or setting high goals. It's about maintaining integrity when no one's watching, keeping your fire alive when no one's clapping, and choosing the harder right over the easier wrong. It's easy to preach values when everything's going well, but your standards only become real when they're tested. When the storms come, when the world turns its back, and when you have every reason to quit but don't. The final key to creating your own standards instead of following others is center discipline with integrity. Discipline gives your vision direction, but integrity gives it purpose. Without integrity, discipline turns into blind ambition, and blind ambition destroys people faster than failure ever could. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you compromise your principles for convenience, you'll never build something lasting. Because real greatness is not built on shortcuts or manipulation. It's built on the quiet, invisible strength of doing the right thing, even when it costs you. Think about this. The world is full of people who almost made it. They had the skill, the intelligence, the connections, but they fell because they didn't have integrity. They chose comfort over character, applause over authenticity, money over meaning. And when their house of success collapsed, it wasn't because of lack of talent. It was because they forgot to protect the foundation. That foundation is your standard, your personal code, the invisible rule book you live by when no one else can see what you're doing. When you live by your own standards, your worth doesn't come from other people's validation. You stop trying to impress and start trying to express. You stop living to be liked and start living to be respected. You don't chase trends, you build trust. And that trust, earned through years of consistency and honesty, becomes your greatest advantage. Because while others are busy building reputations, you're building character. And character is something no one can take away from you. Integrity isn't glamorous. It won't get you instant fame, and it won't always make you popular. But it will make you powerful in a way that lasts. The person who cannot be bought, broken, or bribed, that's a person who is unstoppable. You might lose opportunities because of your honesty. You might face setbacks because you refuse to compromise. But every time you choose your values over convenience, you're building a reputation that no amount of money can buy. People may forget what you say, but they will never forget how you stood your ground when it mattered most. Discipline with integrity also means doing the work even when the excitement is gone. Everyone is motivated in the beginning. That's the easy part. The challenge comes on the 100th day, when progress is slow, when no one notices your effort, when results seem far away. That's when most people give up. But the ones who live by their own standards keep going, not because it's easy, but because it's who they are. They've built habits that don't depend on mood. They've trained themselves to keep moving forward, even when it's hard. That's the kind of strength that separates dreamers from doors. If you look closely at the people who've built empires, movements, or legacies, you'll notice something they all have in common. They never lost their principles while chasing their dreams. They stayed true to their word, loyal to their mission, and disciplined in their execution. They understood that success without honor is empty. Because when your conscience is clean, your confidence becomes unshakable. You can look anyone in the eye, knowing that your success came from effort, not from shortcuts. When you live by your own standards, people will question you. They'll call you stubborn, idealistic, unrealistic. They'll tell you to play the game, to compromise, to follow the crowd. But that's because they're afraid of those who can't be controlled. A person who follows their own standards is dangerous, not because they hurt others, but because they cannot be manipulated. They can walk away from anything that doesn't align with their values. They can lose everything and still not lose themselves. That kind of power terrifies people who depend on validation for identity. There's a moment in every great builder's journey when the world says, "You can't," and they answer silently, "Watch me." Not with arrogance, but with conviction. They don't argue, they prove. They don't shout, they show. Because real power doesn't come from noise, it comes from consistency. The world may ignore you today, but it can't ignore you forever if you keep showing up. When your discipline is stronger than your emotions, your future becomes inevitable. Discipline with integrity also means setting standards not just for what you'll achieve, but for how you'll achieve it. Anyone can chase money. Anyone can chase fame. But not everyone can sleep peacefully at night knowing they never cheated their way up. That peace, that inner calm, is worth more than any title, any trophy, any applause. Because at the end of the day, when the lights go out and the noise fades, you're left with one person, yourself. And if you've lived true to your standards, that reflection in the mirror will smile back at you with pride. People often ask, what's the secret to long-term success? The answer isn't complicated. It's alignment. When your thoughts, actions, and values align, you move through life with power. You don't waste energy pretending to be someone you're not. You don't live in fear of being exposed because there's nothing to hide. You become centered, grounded, and focused. The world might still try to distract you, but you won't lose direction because your compass is inside you, not outside. This doesn't mean you'll never make mistakes. You will. Everyone does. But the difference between those who rise and those who fall is how they respond. When you live by your own standards, you don't hide your failures, you learn from them. You don't blame others, you take responsibility. You don't lose hope, you rebuild. That's what integrity looks like in action. It's not about being perfect, it's about being honest enough to grow. And when you've walked this path long enough, something beautiful happens. You stop needing validation. You stop comparing. You stop chasing what others have. You realize that real success isn't about being the best. It's about being your best. It's about knowing that you've given your full effort, stayed true to your word, and lived with purpose. That's a kind of freedom that no one can give you. You have to earn it by holding yourself to your own standards day after day. The world will always have noise, opinions, criticism, distractions, temptations. But if your inner voice is louder than all that, you'll never lose your way because your standards become your shield. They protect you from pressure, they guide you through chaos, and they remind you who you are when the world tries to make you forget. One day, years from now, when you look back on your journey, you won't remember the likes, the views, or the followers. You'll remember the nights you kept going when you could have stopped. You'll remember the times you chose integrity over convenience. You'll remember the moments when you stood tall, even when it was lonely. And that's what will make your story powerful. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. So build your own standards and protect them with your life. Let discipline be your structure and integrity be your soul. Refuse to be molded by others' expectations. Refuse to bend just to fit in. You were not born to follow the world, you were born to shape it. When you live with unshakable standards and unwavering integrity, you don't just create success, you create legacy. Because in the end, the true measure of a person isn't what they achieve, but what they refuse to compromise to achieve it. Your name will not be remembered for how high you climbed, but for how you climbed. And when your time comes, you'll leave behind not just accomplishments, but an example, a standard for others to rise to. And that, more than anything else, is what makes a life truly extraordinary. Remember this, the goal of life is not to be accepted by everyone, it's to be respected for who you truly are. Don't wait for the world to give you direction. Build your own compass. Don't wait for permission. Design your own rules. The people who change the world are never the ones who followed the path. They are the ones who created a new one. So decide today, will you be another follower of the system or the creator of your own standard? Because once you choose to stand for something greater than approval, you'll realize You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to stand out.